Republicans would be telling their audience, for the ones who at least they think are thinking, that somehow the reason why Democrats need to come up with a plan, why they're holding America hostage because of the debt crisis is otherwise the Democrats are constantly spending and raising the debt. And, they act like they have nothing to do without it. Of course, when infrastructure is built and when all these other projects are built, they enjoy it. Of course, they are never concerned when they're giving tax cuts. They're never concerned when they're ballooning the federal deficit from the wars that they fight. They're never concerned about that being the actual thing that raises the budget. So what do? You get a numerical analysis to prove to everybody that, in fact, Democrats play no bigger deal than Republicans in causing a deficit. In fact, I will ponder, and I would go out on a limb and say that Republican policies are deficit inducing because while Democrats are generally okay with raising taxes for services that are needed, they just want to, for political reasons, provide the services, and also for political reasons on their donor base, not raise taxes. And what is giving services and not raising taxes equivalent to? Federal deficits. And who do more of that? Who does more than that? It turns out to be Republicans. I want you to listen to this, then we'll take it on the other side.
You were wondering, because it's been out of the headlines, no, you did not miss an announcement on the debt ceiling. There is still no agreement between Republicans and the White House. Also, no agreement among Republicans on what exactly they want to cut, only that Democrats do need to cut something since they're the ones to blame for all the spending. But a brand new New York Times analysis of voting records and fiscal forecast shows that's not entirely true. In fact, Republicans are at the very least equally to blame for the now $31 trillion debt. Ryan Noble. So CBO went through and looked at voting records, looked at fiscal analysis, and the New York Times then did their own analysis of that. Explain to me how they got to the point where they can say Republicans are just as much to blame for us being at 31 trillion.
Yeah, I mean, Katie, you basically look at the facts of the voting record from both parties going back through the past two administrations, and it's pretty clear that both Republicans and Democrats have contributed to the ballooning debt for the United States federal government. And when you're talking specifically about what Republicans have done to contribute to that, you'd have to look no further than the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which took a big chunk of revenue away from the federal government and then did not replace it with measurable cuts that would offset that balance. And then it rolls right into the COVID pandemic, where under the Trump administration was the first round of massive amounts of COVID relief funding, and then into the Biden administration, where there were a number of different big fiscal spending measures, including two COVID relief packages, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, all of those contributing to the ballooning debt. Now, the White House says that the president's going to introduce a bill or a budget later this month that's going to at least cut the deficit by $2 trillion.
But I do want to just hit on one more time the Trump tax cuts, because when we have Republicans on, they always bring up the Trump tax cuts as something that has not added to the deficit. In fact, declined and made the deficit decline. This analysis says no, that's not the case at all. Can you explain that a little further?
Yeah, I mean, what Republicans have often argued for many years is that the way to fiscal stability in terms of the federal budget is that if you cut taxes, that will lead to economic prosperity. Economic prosperity leads to more in the ways of tax revenue, and then that tax revenue will offset whatever you have lost because businesses are making more and therefore are paying more in taxes. But that's never really worked out that way. And the simple fact of the matter is that even though when they make these significant cuts in a very short period of time, that's the other thing to keep in mind, is that these tax cuts come and the kind of long-term forecast of economic growth takes a lot longer to kind of implement. And in the interim there, the spending continues to go up and up and up. So the two things just don't balance out.
So, folks, it's not a difficult thing. I mean, this media tried to do even MSNBC tries to do the balance thing. There isn't a balance here. There is not a balance. If you are just a tax cutter, but you're not cutting services per se at the level that you're providing tax cuts, then you are the problem. Now, as it turns out, they really, really, really want to cut entitlement programs now. How do we know? They documented it. They actually had the nerve this time to document it. So folks, if you're concerned about your Social Security, folks, if you're concerned about your Medicare, your Medicaid, Social Security, or any government service that most of us have earned, do not make the mistake and think if they get into power to balance the budget, it won't be raising taxes on those who've been pilfering us for decades, for centuries. It will be taking that money from whom? You. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.